This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Hey everyone, in case you're a new watcher, I am Cosmic Spectrum, an independent artist, and this is my art channel where I share my process videos, some art tutorials now and then, my personal experiences with work and clients, and my current projects that I'm working on. So in this video, I've got something special, at least for me it is anyway, because there is this online costume drawing collective called Zeet Studio Sketch who put on a life drawing session, like a digital or virtual life drawing session once a week, and I have been meaning to try it out for years and years, and I just never got around to it until now. Actually, I don't know how long they've been around for, but at least a couple of years, I think, to my memory. Anyways, the sessions are available for purchase if you wanted to try it yourself, and I will definitely leave a link in the description of this video. So I can't actually show you guys any of the footage from the sessions from Zeet Studio, which makes sense because they are for purchase and they're not free to access. So I'll just be sharing my drawings with you, and I will include a timing stamp like down in the window so you can see. I guess it just makes it more fun to watch, I guess, for the shorter poses to see the count down or count up. Yeah, and this particular session that I chose for my first one is Howl's Moving Castle themed, and it's mostly poses of Sophie, and there are a few poses with Howl as well later on in the session. So in this video, I'm actually going to just select some. I'm obviously not going to show you the entire session because that would be like an extremely long video. I will actually probably put most of the footage on my Patreon page though, so if you wanted access to that, you can check that out. But anyways, I wanted to show you just a selection of the 1-minute poses, which is what you're looking at right now, and then a couple of 2-minute poses as well as some 5-minute poses. But for the 5 minutes, I won't be showing them real time like right now. I will just condense the footage or speed some of it up just so you can get a sense of time, like how quickly I go about these things from these poses, and then the length of the video won't get out of control afterwards. So, and I also want to mention that as usual, I do have the recorded screen over here that you're looking at, but later on in the video I will also have a recording I did with my phone where you can actually see my hand making the artwork on my laptop, the Galaxy Book Pro, which I used to draw these on. So for this video, I didn't want to talk through the entirety of it because I don't think there's that much to say, but I will just mention here and there what comes to mind if there's any tips I want to share with you guys. But for the most part, I do want to leave a large part of it with music only, so you can just watch me complete each pose, because I think that's actually probably the best way to get something out of footage like this, if you just look at it and take mental notes on the progression of things, like the speed at which I'm going, etc. Because I think stuff like this, like doing exercises like this, very short poses with costumes and with some sort of story element involved, I think that is the absolute best way to improve your character art, get better at comics. Obviously this is initially designed for animation, but I think it just as easily applies to illustration and comics, which are my specialties personally, even though I did go to college for animation, so I have a degree in animation. That's actually where I started doing these types of life drawing sessions for the first time in my life, and it was definitely one of the highlights of my animation school experience, and it was always like my favorite thing to do for sure. The only thing I lament from my college days is that oftentimes the costumes weren't super fun, and that typically makes it a little bit more difficult to have a really great time with it. But regardless, I've done many sessions like this while I was in college, and I haven't done anything like this in quite some time. As some of you guys know, I have mostly been doing non-timed, a little bit longer poses from Studio Graphite reference packs, and that has been also a great resource for me. But doing this Zeet studio sketch session really reminded me of my college days, and it just brought back all the memories of how fun it was. And one of the things I really like about the session is that the short poses that you see right now, these ones, the model that was the model that I was referencing from the Zeet studio sketch stream, she was actually taking these poses live, so through a camera. I don't know if it was pre-recorded or not, probably pre-recorded, but in any case, that definitely added a dimension of freshness to it, unlike just using still photos, which is what I do most of the time. So I would highly recommend you guys check out these live streams, and they do host them, I think, every Saturday. But anyways, the information, you can all find it by a quick Google search or by looking at the link in my description. So anyways, during the initial 1-minute poses, I really discovered how long it's been since I've done such short poses, and it's interesting to see how much you really have to adjust the way that you approach drawing the full figure if you want to finish it within a minute. So I definitely had to get used to it and make some adjustments. But then I did realize that 1 minute is actually more time than you would think, and then slowly transitioning into 2-minute poses and 5-minute poses. Like 5 minutes seemed so long by comparison to 1-minute poses, so that was kind of an interesting effect that happened. But yeah, like I said, I will just let some of these play out, and I will comment here and there if something comes to mind. As you can see, we're getting into the 2-minute poses now, and the last drawing that I was doing, I didn't even realize that it was a 2-minute pose. I was still under the impression that it was 1 minute, and then I noticed that I have all these extra seconds all of a sudden, and that was just fun to discover. But as you can see with this pose, now that I know that it's 2 minutes, I have slowed down my approach by a little bit, and I have some guidelines here and there, whereas in the 1-minute poses, there's definitely no time for guidelines, and you just have to put down whatever lines you think will work and just roll with it right off the bat. And before I do go on with this video, I just wanted to take a quick minute to tell you about today's sponsor, Squarespace. As an independent artist, I have to juggle a lot of different projects, and a portfolio website upkeep isn't something I can spend a lot of time on, which is why I love using Squarespace. Once the initial setup is done, maintenance is very fast, so whenever I have something to add to my portfolio, uploading artwork and rearranging the gallery to look good only takes a couple of minutes. Squarespace has multiple modes of editing pages as well, which makes it super versatile, so you can just add a block of text or an image and move things around intuitively without any need for custom codes. There are also many fantastic e-commerce options on Squarespace, and you can have a full shop selling digital or physical goods, or a secret members only content area if that's your business model. If you want to start building your own website, head over to squarespace.com and get started right away. You can play around and see how quick and easy it is to make a professional looking website for yourself. Once you put it together and are ready to launch, you can head to squarespace.com/cosmicspectrumart and get 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. And now back to the video. One of my good friends, she goes by Surpangur on Instagram. Her name is Nina. She's been doing these sessions recently and I've been super inspired by her work, and she often adds color afterwards or if there's any time left over in the poses. And I was already thinking about that at this point because I do think that color adds so much more life to these drawings. And so, as you will see later on, during a break in between, like I think there's one big break in the middle of the session, I just used that time to add a bunch of color to these little drawings, and I think it really made a big difference afterwards. So yeah. One of the things that I noticed during this session that was super important was just finding a brush that I'm comfortable with, which I sort of was able to do, but I'm sure there are brushes out there that I would probably like better. In the end, I settled with a brush that's kind of similar to the one I actually ink with most of the time. It's the Kyle's Drawing Box wet pencil brush. I've never really used it before. It does look quite similar to the like rough pastel brush that I use sometimes, or some of the Shioon Kim brushes. And what I like about this brush so much is that if you press lightly on it, it's got a very textured type of look, which I really prefer. Obviously, this is digital, and like I've mentioned, I used specifically my laptop, which is a Galaxy Book Pro 360, which I really love for drawing. I think it's honestly perfect. It like hits all the things that all the check boxes for me when it comes to a good mobile studio setup. And I specifically wanted to use the laptop for this session because it brings me a more relaxed atmosphere, because the screen is quite a bit smaller than my typical CINTIQ 24 Pro, I think, that I use on a regular basis for my work and client work and whatnot. And another thing is that it is regular resolution, so it's not 4K like my CINTIQ, which actually makes it a little bit easier to not get bogged down in details. And being bogged down with details is definitely not what you want, especially when you're doing things like things of this nature, quick poses, very short time frames. And that's why a textured brush just really adds a lot of life to the drawings as well, in my opinion, and that's why I picked something like that. And another thing that I was having a little bit of trouble with was just constantly starting out the drawing to be too big. Part of the reason why I did this is honestly because when I went to Sheridan College for animation, the way that we were taught was to use a large newsprint pad to draw on. And actually the shortest poses in those sessions were typically 30 seconds, which is just crazy thinking about it now. Although I will say I think those were for nude sessions and not for the costume ones, because with costume you definitely can't do much in 30 seconds, that's for sure. But anyways, I did get quite used to like using the big newsprint pads and charcoal or Conte most of the time. And afterwards, when I was probably in third year, I will say third and fourth year, I started just doing these sessions with my sketchbook instead, and that opened my eyes as to how much more fun it can be, because just using one medium, like honestly Conte is not my favorite medium. I don't like it. I prefer much smaller drawings, but sometimes like the habit of trying to draw bigger does creep up, specifically during things like this, because normally my instinct is actually do the opposite. But yeah, so I had to really adjust like the size of the screen. I had to zoom out, and then sometimes I had to select and just like make the drawing smaller in the session, just so I could fit things and continue to finish the pose at the right size, if that makes any sense. So that's one of the things about digital art. Like, I don't really like the ability to zoom in during things like this, because it just turns into a hindrance more than anything, which is why some of the more successful poses, I think, are the ones where I managed to not zoom in, or at least not to zoom in until later on in the pose. So here in the footage, I transitioned to a sped up version, which was 5 times the speed, I think, just because I wanted to fit in a bunch of the 5-minute poses to show you guys in their entirety without taking up like an hour of your time. So you have a pretty good idea of what my speed is like based on what you've seen thus far, and so you can pretty much imagine that it's very similar. And these are the results of the 5-minute poses. I was definitely able to get a lot more detail in as far as the clothing goes, and I definitely spent more time on doing the undersketch this time around, which I think helped with the shapes quite a bit, because with these little drawings, there can be several goals in mind. I think probably depending on your current position in the art journey that you're on. But for me at this point, one of the biggest goals is to make the drawing appealing, which is pretty difficult to do in such a short time frame. So obviously, to make a drawing appealing, like there's a million different things that you could take into consideration. And I noticed that one of the things that I try to take some time to do is to make the face somewhat appealing, which is really, really hard with such a short time frame, of course. So honestly, for poses shorter than 5 minutes, it's hard to draw in a face at all. So obviously, I will go with a very, very simplified version of my typical art style. But I do think that most of the time, like even a super simplified version of the face like this still looks really cute in the end. So and I do think it really adds to the storytelling aspect of these little drawings. And I think leaving the face blank can be like, I try to avoid that, so I usually don't do that. And so looking back at this footage when I was editing this video, I noticed that sometimes I take like quite a bit of time on the face, even on the very short poses, in proportion to the rest of the time, like how I allotted to the rest of the figure, which is kind of funny. Sometimes I just like really rush towards the end just to complete it. So yeah, but I do think it's worthwhile to get the face in, at least for me anyways. mentioned that I was adding some color to these after the fact, I wanted to say that I also took this opportunity to experiment with some of the brushes that I have, because as you can see on the right hand or on the left hand side here of my screen, I have a ton of brushes that I've purchased over the years, and to be honest, I have not used like 95% of them. And so these types of sessions really afford me an opportunity to experiment a little bit, which I actually seldom do when it comes to my regular work. And I really like the look of this one brush that has this texture kind of built into it, so I'm actually seeing myself using it in the future with my illustrations. So that was kind of a nice little discovery. And so now I am switching to the footage from my phone, and these are the couple poses, which were 10 minutes long, so about 5 minutes per character this time around, and I had so much fun drawing these. The only thing that I wanted to mention quickly is that the model for Howl was also a woman, and I did find her poses to be very feminine. Like, they were beautiful poses, but I did want to draw Howl to be more like masculine or something, so I was a little bit stumped at the beginning because I didn't want to just see the pose that I'm drawing, because it did have a very feminine type of vibe to me. So I just had to think about it a little bit, and I think I even like paused, thought about it, and rewind the time a little bit to just give me an opportunity to redo the pose. I ended up just kind of changing it to just whatever I preferred, and so that's just something I thought I would mention. I know that you can't see the references that I'm using, but if you do end up doing this session in Zeet Studio Sketch, you will see what I mean for sure. Regardless of that, I think like the photos were just so beautiful, and it's such a lovely cosplay. Definitely fantastic models for this session, so yes. I'm not sure if you can tell here, but I did switch up the brush just a little bit. It's still the same brush, but I think I messed with some of the settings before the 10-minute poses began. Usually what I mean by messing with the settings is I will go into the brush settings, and I will go usually into the pattern subcategory, and I like to tweak the scale of the pattern. So I will usually make the pattern bigger if I want to see more texture or want it to be more prominent. And then I also mess around with other settings that are under the same category, like the pattern category. So you can change things like brightness and contrast, I think, which I also do sometimes. And another thing that I will change once in a while is the scattering. So if I want the edges of the brush to be less smooth, I will add a little bit more scatter in, I can't remember which category it is actually, but I'm sure like if you just look around, there's not that many things you can change in the brush. You will be able to find the scattering. I think it might actually be in the pattern as well, I'm not sure, but yes. So I think I changed those things a little bit, because for these poses I just decided to bring in a little bit of black and just have some solid shading here and there, to just add a little bit more interest to the line art. And I do like the way it turned out. I'm gonna see if I can kind of migrate this approach to my super short poses as well when I do one of the future sessions. And speaking of which, I actually want to try streaming something like this later. Like I said, I obviously can't show you the stream that I am watching over at Zeet, but I can still show you my drawings, I suppose, or I can just kind of create my own set of drawings and then stream that. But yeah, I'm trying to figure out what to stream and when to start streaming, so hopefully I'll be able to do that soon. So at this point in the session, we moved on to 4-minute poses, which a few of them were portraits, and then there were a couple of full body ones as well. I really enjoyed the portrait focused ones. Obviously, you guys probably know I just love drawing faces. It's one of my favorite things, and it was nice to get a little bit more time to just spend on the faces during these few poses. And so what you're looking at now are just the last few poses of the session. I believe these are also 4-minute poses, and at this point I actually did notice that I was way more warmed up and it was much easier to draw than it was at the beginning of the session, when it usually feels like super rusty. And I think they were really nice poses to end the session on. So I'm just gonna let the rest of the video just play out, and I will have a few slides at the end with the final stills of these drawings that you can look at. And yeah, I wanted to thank you guys for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. It's a little bit different from the usual. I had so much fun with this session, so I'm probably going to do these a lot more often now going forward. And in my next videos, I will give you updates about my comic project, Gloaming Veil, and what other plans I have currently at the time. Super excited for fall to start, my favorite season. And yeah, I hope everyone's having a lovely week, and I will see you guys in my next video. Enjoy the rest of the video. Bye!